We are back with Greensboro Mayor Nancy Vaughan answering your questions. You can text in your question. There's the number right there at the bottom of the screen, the 336-379-5775. So far, we've got 2 questions so far. This person's asking, who do we, excuse me, who do we contact about dangerous intersection at Benjamin Parkway and Josephine Boyd? We've sent 2 requests.
So that could go to the City Council or directly to the Greensboro Department of Transportation. I do know that GDOT rolled out a plan to look at traffic safety throughout the entire city. I think it needs to be tweaked a little bit, and I believe that we need to be more aggressive in going after some of those intersections. We've heard an awful lot lately about Cone Boulevard and the areas near Kirkwood, and I do know that they are doing greater traffic enforcement there. So we want to hear what those issues are, so you could go on the city's website and send it to the City Council, or you could send it to the Department of Transportation.
And I don't know who they sent the 2 requests to, so if you've got a follow-up with that question, you can text it to us. All right, and the next question is, whatever happened to the projects on South Elm at Gate City Boulevard?
So I'm assuming that they're talking about the redevelopment area near Union, across the street from Union Square campus, and that was where we were hoping a Lidl grocery store would go in, which would be really great to serve the people in that immediate area. You know, Lidl canceled their contract. They had said that there was issues with the land out there, that it was going to take much more remediation. We have not gotten the same feedback from the Department of Environmental Quality. I know that there is a contract pending to look at doing some housing down there, but it has not been finalized yet. And that has been an area that's been extremely frustrating, because for well over 10 years it's been vacant. And you know, we would like to see a noteworthy development go in there that would support the surrounding community.
All right, so since you mentioned housing, let's just talk about that, because we've talked about that a couple of times. Home prices, really high, lack of homes, we've got all of that. How much of that is a concern, and what do we need to be doing?
So it is a very big concern, and is something that Council talks about very, very often. And it's not only affordable housing, I call it attainable housing, because if you look at what's available, there's a lack of availability at every single price point. Usually when there's an election, construction slows down a little bit, especially right now with inflation and interest rates higher. But a lot of people are taking a wait-and-see attitude towards what happens with the presidential election. What I find most interesting, it really doesn't matter who wins. Once the election is over and there is a feeling that people know what they're dealing with, we see an increase in activating those permits. So I think we're just in that cycle right now. We're waiting for the election, and hopefully that will see interest rates come down. We have a record high number of building permits pending. So once that pipeline opens up, I think it'll be very helpful. But until then, there's really not a whole lot we can do about it.
Yeah, and we just talked about on the news about landlords and how that there is no cap in our state for any kind of rent control.
Correct. And you know, one thing when we look at the rent prices rising, it's also, if you look at what's being built, they are luxury apartments that are being built. So when you average that in, it pulls up the average price of a rent in Greensboro and Guilford County. And that's being driven by the market. People are, you know, building one-bedroom apartments that go anywhere from $1,300 and above, and people are renting them. Usually they've got lots of amenities, but we do not have any control from the legislature for rent control or rent freezing or anything of that nature.
Yeah, some states allow it maybe on the city or the county level, some do on the state level. North Carolina does not allow that, and people say, well, how do we get that changed? And I'm like, well, it is not at the city level.
Correct. It is at the state level, and you would have to lobby your legislators about putting some sort of a price cap on. And I have to say, I think that's a heavy lift. I don't think that's likely to happen, because this is a very strong private property rights legislature, and they're not going to tell people how much they can rent their properties for.
We do have a question about how are we handling the homeless in Greensboro due to the heat?
Once again, the IRC, they have a 24/7 drop-in center. I did see that the county put out a list of places that are considered cooling stations. I believe that the ones that were listed in Greensboro were the IRC for a 24/7 drop-in. I think Salvation Army was open during business hours. Two healthcare facilities were open during regular business hours, and Tiny Homes was open for a few hours in the morning and a few hours in the afternoon. That is the only list that I've seen, and that was for all of the city of Greensboro. So as much as the, we know we have issues with the IRC, once again, they're stepping up for that 24/7 cooling station. And, I hope that people are staying hydrated and out of this awful sun.
All right, we are going to continue taking your questions. We'll be back for one more segment after this.